Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. Got another tier list for you as we are at the end of the current season, coming up on season... are we on 30? We are on season 30 here soon. So, as usual, we are going to be starting off the season, of course, with the tier list here. This is going to be a post-ban list tier list. So, I am going to be keeping the new upcoming ban list in mind, even though there's still about another week or so before it actually takes effect. So, if you're wondering what's up with the current meta and how it's going to shift to the ban list, we will definitely be covering that today. I have 30 decks here, as always as ever. I have pulled them from the top decks that are represented on Untapped in both Diamond and Master ranks. So these are the 30 most frequent decks that appear there in terms of both popularity and win rate. As always as ever, gotta throw out a couple disclaimers to clarify the choices here and also the tier list itself. Rogue tier, I consider Rogue tier decks to still be quite good, capable of reaching Master 1 and or getting a tournament top with a dedicated pilot. So if your deck, or rather if a deck that I put into Rogue tier that you like, well, ends up being Rogue, don't worry, that's not me saying it's bad. Again, I think that every deck on this list is capable of both hitting Master 1 and or topping a tournament. Again, some of which might need slightly more dedicated pilots, but still there all the same. Additionally, if you're, I keep saying you're because I feel like, you know, people are like, where's the deck that I play, you know, or why is the deck that I play on here, but, or on this tier, but, no, if there is a deck that is not featured on here, that doesn't mean I think it's bad or below Rogue or anything like that. Again, we can only talk about so many decks at a time. And finally, as always ever, if you find yourself disagreeing with my tier list, definitely feel free to let me know in the comments below. I do enjoy discourse. Rudeness, however, is not fun, so I will ask you to please leave that at the door. But yeah, again, whether you agree or disagree, I would definitely love to hear from you, so let me know in the comments below. I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's dive right on into it. First card we got here is going to be Charles, the Link version, representing Infer Noble Knights. So, Infer Noble Knights did get a support card in the last selection pack. They got Phoenix Gearblade. I still have yet to cover the deck with Gearblade. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but I do want to do that here in the near future. So, Infer Noble continues to be a deck that I think is very much rewarded by people who are dedicated pilots, right? Because it is a bit of a complex deck, but if you can learn that deck's lines in and out, you'll be capable of doing some very sick plays. And this deck can also play through a lot more hand traps than you might think it can too. So this is one of those decks where, like, I think power level wise, it's like probably mid, maybe even upper tier 3. But just because not that many people use it, again, because it can be so difficult to learn, I'm going to put it at the top of Rogue. This is, for me, going to be one of those, like, borderline decks where bottom of tier 3, I would 100% agree with. Or, again, I think, again, even power level-wise, it's mid or upper tier 3. But just in terms of also factoring in the play rate / popularity, I'm going to leave it at the very top of Rogue. But, again, if you wanted to call this deck tier 3, I would not disagree with you at all. Okay, next up we have Cash Tira, as represented, of course, by Arisehard. Cash Tira is pretty weird to evaluate kind of as a deck right now because it's not really played pure much at all anymore because of all the hits it's taken, right? Even Cash Tira decks that do want to summon Arisehard are now typically slotting in another engine, one of various engines. You could play Horus, you could play Zodiac, you could play just like more stun cards. I've seen like Cash Tira stun hybrid, so like that's also a thing. Ooh, this is actually kind of a tricky one. Where do I want to put Cash Tira? Last time I had it at the bottom of tier 3, but I honestly don't think the deck is more powerful, or really consistency is a big thing, right? I don't think the deck is more consistent than Infer Noble Knight right now, so I gotta put it below there. But that also kind of makes me want to bump both of these up to tier 3 potentially. I don't know, I'm gonna leave them down in Rogue. It's weird to call Cash Tira as an archetype Rogue, but I really think that's where we're at. Again, this is mostly decks that are focused on summoning out the Arisehard, right? There are, of course, higher tiered decks that use some amount of Cash Tira cards as part of an engine, but as far as Cash Tira as the main focal strategy, I don't know if I can put it in tier 3. I definitely don't think I can put it above Infernoble. So I'm going to put them both at the top of Rogue. But again, I could see myself changing my mind, putting them both in tier 3 or just Infernoble. And if you wanted to argue either case, again, I wouldn't even disagree with you. So dinosaurs are going to be Rogue as well, though I think also Upper Rogue. I have noticed the popularity fall off a little bit since the latest release, which I think was like the Fusion Dinosaur stuff, like the Terror Kites Terra or whatever it's called. Yeah, no, I think the deck is still very viable. I just have seen that the new deck hype for it is worn off slightly. Oh, Lars, the rank 6, Evolzar Lars was the other one that came out kind of recently, although I think that was under their pack. But yeah, no. In any case, Rogue tier, Upper Rogue tier for sure for the Dinosaur deck. So Mekonko. Mekonko, I think, is another one of those borderline decks, but I'm comfortable putting it up in tier 3. I feel like this is kind of the spot Mekonko's just been in the entire time it's been out, right? Lower tier 3, bordering on Rogue. A lot of people kind of think of Mekonko as like, oh, that going second deck. But Mekonko actually really does like to go first a lot of the time. And again, funnily enough, if you look at untapped stats, the deck actually does have a notably higher going first win rate than a going second win rate. Mekonko is capable of doing so much more than just the OTK. Of course, the OTK is what it's most well known for, but when combined, especially with Infernoble, it does honestly end up being a very viable combo strategy. So again, bottom of tier 3 for me is where I'm going to end up putting that. Pearly has definitely been surprising me a little bit in terms of how well it's been doing, and honestly just how strong the deck feels. I predicted when the new Pearly support came out that it was going to be a tier 3 deck, but we have seen it now for multiple seasons remain, in my opinion, a pretty firm tier 2 deck. I also think that if you are new to like Master Duel or competitive play when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, like even if you're experienced but you're now wanting to get into like a more competitive scene, or if you're new and also looking to play competitively, I recommend Pearly. I think Pearly is a pretty good deck to start with. It's relatively cheap, it's got a secret pack, it's not too difficult to learn the basics, but this deck also very, very much rewards you for knowing the combo lines very well. I think the only thing that's not the most new player friendly about this deck is like the Master Duel UI interfaces with like, okay, do you want to discard, do you want to summon, or whatever that whole, you know, the window is. But honestly, learning that will also help you navigate the Master Duel UI better, so maybe it is actually good in that regard. In any case, I think Pearly is a very, very good deck. So Phantom Knight's going to be our next deck. Phantom Knight is already, I think, a very solid deck, and it is actually getting a notable boost from the next ban list, as Rite of Armasir will be going to 3, and Adventure Phantom Knight is definitely the best way to play the deck. You can play it with Horus. Jury's kind of out on if that's actually the optimal way to play it, but honestly, milling with Zombie Vamp is never a bad thing, and I think the Horus package is really strong even outside of just milling, right? But really, I'm looking at the third Rite of Armasir and thinking about that. Phantom Knight, I've always maintained, is like an upper rogue deck. I'm honestly willing to put it above even Kashira when it comes to the post-ban list with even more access to the Adventure Engine. That being that much more consistent, I think will be a good boost for a deck which is already pretty good. So yeah, I'm willing to call Phantom Knight better than like a more pure Kashira strategy, right? So Runic, this is kind of an all-encompassing. So this is interesting, right? Because when I say Runic, there are so many different archetypes this could apply to, and most people's first thought is like Sun, right? But I'm going to go with the way that Untapped categorizes Runic, which they kind of combine the stats for, it looks like, the Bestial Runic decks and the Chimera Runic decks. I could see those being two of the more popular variants, even more so than Stun. I think Stun is often not on Runic anymore, especially since Fountain went to 1. It's just not as consistent, but as far as Runic decks go, again, thinking about Bestial Runic and Chimera Runic, I will put them in Rogue, and I am willing to put them. I think they're about the same level as Dinosaurs, but I'll put them a little bit lower, just because mostly, like, again, the Fountain being at 1, as always, is never going to hamper the consistency of those Runic decks. But Nevertheless, I do still think it is a very solid engine, and one that is very much worth considering for a lot of different strategies, right? So, Paleozoic has finally gotten enough play that it is showing up in these top decks here, again, going by both win rate and popularity here, and we can all thank Joshua Schmidt for that, right? No, well, I mean, yes, he is the one who, like, very much popularized the 60-card Paleo deck, but, yeah, I think it's a cool deck, honestly. The whole, like, rise to full height, milling a bunch of traps, using transaction rollback and all that fun stuff. I don't know if it's as good as, like, the runic stuff. I could see it being, like, a little bit higher on the tier list, but I think mostly for popularity's sake, I'm going to put it down lower. And also just because, again, this encompasses multiple different runic archetypes, right? But yeah, the 60-card Paleo deck is cool. And I don't think it's, like, terribly expensive, especially if you already have a playset of transaction rollbacks lying around, which I actually don't. I still haven't crafted even a single copy of that card yet. Not because I hate it or anything, I just haven't gotten around to any deck that would want it. But yeah, no, I think it's a neat deck. I think it's pretty cool and looks fun. And yeah, I'm gonna put it in probably mid to lower rogue, if I had to say. Alright, Sky Striker is not only getting a new animation in the form of Engage, but is also getting a third copy of Engage as well. There are also, of course, still in the future Sky Striker cards that will come out at some point that I personally can't say definitively. But I don't know if those are going to have as much of an impact as the third Engage. Well, the third Engage is pretty big, honestly, in terms of boosting that consistency. I don't think that any amount of new support that may or may not come out on top of the third Engage, honestly, I don't think it's enough to pull Sky Striker out of Rogue and into Tier 3. I do expect the deck's popularity to rise quite a bit, to the point where it might seem like it's a Tier 3 deck, but I think once new deck hype wears off, we'll probably see Sky Striker fall. I'll put it above Dino, but below Cashiera, somewhere in this category of, like, upper rogue, which is honestly actually about where the deck's already at, but who knows, maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe that getting this nice little power boost will be enough to make it tiered. It won't be the first time, honestly. When Linkage, the quick play spell, first came out, Sky Striker saw enough play to boost up to Tier 3, almost even Tier 2, but if I recall correctly. But yeah, no, I think that the power level, honestly, I think it is a power level thing. The power level of decks is so much higher now than when Sky Striker came out that I think that's going to be the big hurdle. And again, I don't know if the cards that are out in, like, the OCG/CCG, once those come to Master Duel, if that'll be enough to lift it up, right? But we shall see. Overall, though, I think it is a good time to be a Sky Striker player, for sure. Trap Tricks continues to be upper rogue. I'm actually going to usually I actually put it up here, but, like, we've seen so many, like, decks that are, like, usually in the Tier 3 range kind of get bumped down, that we're seeing Trap Tricks now get bumped down a little bit as well in terms of its spot on the tier list. But overall, I still think that Trap Tricks is a very solid back row deck. If it weren't for a lab, it would probably just be the best trap-based deck right now, but still very solid, still very good. Good stuff there. Alright, Tier Lament. Ooh, this is one that I could actually see going in a couple of different spots here, because Tier Lament, with the release of the Horus package, has seen quite a bit of a popularity rise. However, it's actually, if you look at Untapped, I think it's the second most played deck, just below Snake Eye, even above Rescue Ace, which is kind of wild to me. But I don't know if that necessarily warrants it being Tier 2, and the only reason I hesitate is because, again, I think a lot of the popularity, well, it's kind of a split, right? A lot of the popularity is the recent Horus package coming out, but at the same time, it is also just a good deck in the current format, Tier Lament right now, right? It's a solid game plan overall to begin with, and you can play quite a number of cards that can potentially mess with the current meta, most notably the Shizu Shufflers, the One of Mudora and Keldo each, are fairly good right now against not just Snake Eye, but quite a few decks in the current metagame. I think that I'm going to keep tier limit at the very top of tier 3. If you wanted to put this in tier 2, that's another case where I would not fault you for that. And maybe later I might end up changing my mind. But I think for now, let's keep tier limit at the very top of tier 3. Again, it's close, but I think that... Again, I think it's mostly the fact that the popularity is raising due to the Horus cards being played in it. But again, as I said multiple times now, I suspect that pure tier limit, or like with the one Shaddoll Winda and a couple of Shaddoll monsters, like one Beast and or Hollow, is probably still just the way to go with that. Unchained is a fairly solid deck in its own right. I'm gonna keep it in tier 3. I think it's definitely below tier limit, but this one I don't think broaches into tier 2 territory. I'll put it above Makanko though, because I do think that Unchained is definitively a tier 3 deck. Like, I do think it is notably stronger than some of these other decks that are here in Rogue, right? You can make arguments for like maybe Infernoble and or Kashtira potentially being a little bit stronger than Unchained is right now, but Infernoble, I really wish I would have done that deck profile to have a better idea of where it's at now that Phoenix Gearblade is out. But yeah, Unchained, I'm willing to pretty definitively put it in tier 3. All right, Monadium, as always, is represented by the card that the boss monster that it does not play. Monadium has actually had one of the highest win rates of this current season, according to Untapped. But win rate alone, I don't think, that doesn't mean we should just jam it in tier 1, right? I do think it is a pretty solid tier 2 deck, and I'm willing to put it above Pearly? Am I? I don't know. Pearly is definitely the more popular deck between the two, but Monadium does, again, have a notably higher win rate. I think overall, they're pretty comparable in terms of like their placement within tier 2. So I'll just keep Monadium a little bit above Pearly, but really these spots are interchangeable. I think they're about the same power level. But again, Monadium, very, very good deck right now. It's definitely underplayed for sure. I think that's, I don't know, I think it's the fact that even though it looks like a linear deck, it is actually a little bit weird how you have to play out some combo lines. And oh, I remember what else I wanted to say about Monadium. The Calamity ban, I would not call that a hit to Monadium. Like, yes, occasionally Monadium would just jam out Calamity. However, I think the builds that were on that are just like inferior, like, or not inferior, that's not the right word, not even suboptimal. I prefer unoptimal as the phrase. Like, certainly a Monadium deck that was playing Calamity could very easily do well. However, I think that optimal Monadium builds were never on Calamity. That's actually the case for a couple of other decks, or at least one other deck in particular we're going to see here pretty shortly. But yeah, tier 2, that's a good spot for the Monadium deck there. Oh, stun. Stun. I don't know. Just put it down here. I don't know. I will say there is an argument to put stun above non-stun runic variants and paleo. And I think I will actually keep it there. I'll be real with you. Usually I just put stun at the bottom because I know like literally nobody's gonna complain about that. Usually if the bottom deck is not stun, like somebody who's on is like, hey, I actually think that deck's cool. But again, of course, any deck that is on this tier list is, I think, a good deck. But really, what I think about, especially if I factor in popularity, like I think I gotta put stun above. I mean, if it was popularity alone, I'd put it above like a lot of these rogue decks, but of course I kind of like to factor in both popularity and win rate, and Stun's win rate is actually not great at all. It is typically like right at or just below 50%, so which is pretty accurate, honestly. Yeah, no, I'll put Stun here. I'll leave it above Runic and Paleo, but as always, it's close, and as always, that doesn't mean that Paleo is an awful deck or anything if it ends up at the bottom. Hero decks. I will put that a little bit below Dino. I think Hero and Dino are pretty comparable in that, like, they're decks that every now and then get another piece of support. It doesn't really change their place on the tier list at mid-rogue, but it does keep them relevant throughout the changing metas, which is pretty good. So, yay, Hero. Super V Samurai is that other deck I was talking about before, where, like, definitely more often than Manadian, like, yeah, you would see Super V Samurai on Calamity, but I don't think that is the optimal way to play the deck. Super V Samurai's popularity has predictably dropped pretty hard since Soul Piercer went to 1, but I don't think that makes it a bad deck by any means, and... I think it's pretty comparable with Infernoble, honestly. I'm going to put it at the bottom of tier 3. I think it's comparable to Infernoble for being not only a long-form combo deck, but just, like, in terms of its power level, like, you do have the condition where, again, you're a long-form combo deck, so you got to play through hand traps a little more... What's the word I'm looking for? Not aggressively, but I guess hand traps affect you a little bit more than they would even other combo decks, right? But at the same time, if you are able to just power through and do your full combo, you end up with a more powerful board. It's kind of like that trade-off, right? I don't think that the Soul Piercer limit is as big of a blow as it might seem like it is. I think that a lot of the reason, because Super Heavy Samurai was never, like, the most popular deck anyway. Sure, it was when the, you know, the Wakaushi and Big Banky and other stuff first came out, and Musaro was pictured here. But, again, as far as, like, its popularity, it doesn't seem like a lot of people are, like, super attached to it as a deck, the way that some people are, like, certain other meta decks, which I think is definitely contributing to its popularity falling. I don't know why I couldn't say that word for a second, but, yeah, no, I think that this deck is a little better than people may think right now, but all in all, still going to be... I don't know. I think that probably by the next tier list, I'll be comfortable putting this in Rogue, but for now, I'm going to leave it at the very bottom of tier 3. Okay, so I have Kisakeel here kind of representing Live Twin Sprite in particular, which did actually receive a notable boost from a new card in the latest expansion pack, that being the EMP Meowmine. Oh, and also Sprite Jet is coming back to 2. That's also definitely worth considering as well. I'm willing to put Twin Sprite at about the same power level as Adventure Phantomite, maybe even a little bit higher. Yeah, I'll leave it a little bit higher. It's weird calling it better than Pure Cashier, but I do think that is where we're at right now. Maybe I could see this being the case, but again, if we're thinking about popularity as well, I've definitely noticed a significant drop in Pure Cashier. Much like Super Heavy Samurai, I think it's not a strategy that a lot of people feel a lot of attachment towards. So as soon as it started taking like a lot of consistency hits, you know, that's when the popularity just started to like tank overall. But yeah, Twin Sprite, again, the EMP and Meowmine came out recently. Sprite Jet is back up to 2, which we love to see. Yeah, this is already a very solid, like, upper to mid rogue deck in its own right, and with these nice little power boosts, it is actually kind of creeping back to tier 3. Really nice to see any variant of Sprite looking to sort of make its way out of rogue, and hopefully we'll see more unlimiteds like Sprite Jet that can help the archetype even further. Okay, so here we have Turbulence representing Rescue Ace. This is the first deck I'm going to throw in the tier 1 slot. Now, Rescue Ace did take an impact in the latest ban list. It might not be the most obvious off the top of your head, but the Wanted limit does impact Rescue Ace as well, because you definitely prefer to open with Diabell. Either Diabell or Bonfire for Poplar, for Original Sin, for Hydrant. That way you can add and then still normal summon Airlifter, right? Of course, opening Airlifter to just normal summon is fine too, but yeah, I don't know. Rescue Ace is already a very consistent deck. However, with now having lost 2 copies of Wanted, for one, you definitely play 3 Diabell if you weren't on it before for whatever reason, and you definitely max out on Bonfire as well. I don't think playing a second Poplar is worth it because normal summon Poplar isn't really plays, because again, the Original Sin line into Hydrant is only good if you already have your normal summon. So I guess maybe if you have the Field Spell, but that's also a card you only play 1 of, and you shouldn't play more than 1 of. But I think that Rescue Ace will definitely still be tier 1. As far as if it'll be the best deck, we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but absolutely still tier 1. It definitely did not lose much by losing 1 copy of Wanted, right? Like, it is a consistency hit, but not a super notable one by any means, so. Ignister continues to show up, even though I don't think it's had any recent support, like even a random Cyber monster. There is the Meow Mine, of course, is a random Cyber monster that came out recently, but I don't think that sees play in Ignister specifically. Ignister, I'm willing to kind of drop here around the same level as Dino and Hero, where like, good combo deck, very strong, just not always the best. Well, actually, that's not true. That's not always the best at playing through hand traps, but this is a very much more hand trap heavy format, so it's more likely that people are going to have 2 hand traps, right, instead of just 1. And when it comes to that, then Ignister starts to suffer a little bit more in terms of like, also Nib being so prominent in this format is another kind of bane for Ignister there. But yeah, I'll place it around the same power level as like Dino and Hero. I think that's a good spot for it. Vanquish Soul continues to kind of slide off in terms of popularity, but in terms of power level, for me, I'm trying to figure out if I want to put it above or below, like where Manadium or Pearly are at. I'll put it above, because the popularity hasn't fallen like too much from where it was at before. It has fallen overall in the past couple of seasons, but in terms of win rate, it is definitely still a deck that performs very well. And I don't know, actually. I look at it here above Manadium and Pearly, and I'm like, is that really where I want it? It's definitely a tier 2 deck, but I might actually slide it down here. What if I did this? Alright, I like that. Actually, I kind of want to do that. There we go. I was looking at the tier 2. Yeah. I'm willing to call... I don't know. God, all 3 of these are actually around the same spot. Tier 2. Well, one thing you're going to find about this meta coming up in particular is that the lines between tiers, particularly tier 1 and 2, the power level difference is going to shorten greatly due to the latest ban list hits. So it's not even just the tier 2 decks. It's like a lot of the upper part of this tier list is going to feel like roughly the same power level. I think we're already looking at a fairly diverse meta. It might not feel like that with how prominent Snake Eye is, but I think we are actually in a pretty diverse meta, and it'll feel that way a lot more so once the ban list has taken into effect. I'll just leave this here for now in this order for tier 2. That feels fine. Ooh, Salamangreat. So I kind of think this is a deck that people are sleeping on a little bit. I think it's going to end up in Rogue. I'll put it a little below Cashier. I don't know, actually. Well, because here's what I was about to say. Personally, I think this is a tier 3 deck. And I think that now more and more people I've noticed as weeks go on are kind of catching on to the fact that, like, Salamangreat's a pretty good deck, honestly. It's a lot better than it might look on paper, for sure, when it plays at its combo line, especially turn 1. Like, having the double board wipe is so good. So I think it's a tier 3 deck. I'll put it down here in Rogue. I will put it above Cashier, though. In Upper Rogue, for sure. But this is one that I think if people... Because actually right now it has a pretty high popularity rating too on Untapped. 6% makes it, I think, the 4th or maybe 5th most popular deck right now. I think it's 4th, actually. Below Snake Eye, then Tearlament, then Rescue Ace. But... So... Yeah, I'll leave it in Upper Rogue for now. But again... I can see a world where this is tier 3. We'll have to see if the new deck hype wears off for it, or if people do actually kind of stay more attached to the strategy, right? Lab is absolutely tier 2, and I think it's definitely a good notch above these other 3 decks right here. I think I'll move up Vanquish Soul, though, a little bit. I think I will actually end up putting it above Pearly, but again, I think it's pretty close. Again, Lab, though, definitely a notable notch above. I'm willing to definitely say it's above Vanquish Soul. These are both very competent control decks, but when it comes to, like, the just sheer resource recursion, right, I think Lab is definitely got... I think Pearly is actually kind of a control deck, too. Lab definitely has these other control decks that are in tier 2 beat as far as, like, resource looping goes. Pearly actually does have good resource looping, but it's kind of dependent on your opponent removing your stuff to get the benefits of the field and continuous spell. But Lab is just like, oh my god, it can recycle things so easily. Alright, next up we have Chimera. This is going to be separate from Brunette Chimera. This will be... like, pure Chimera is kind of a thing still. Branded Chimera is still, of course, a thing. But, I think this will pretty firmly be mid-rogue. About the same level as some of these other, like, Honestly, pretty cool decks. Like, I think Dino, Chimera, Ignister, Hero, I think are all very, very cool decks in their own right. These, like, kind of mid-level combo decks. But for one reason or another, whether they're susceptible to disruption a little bit more, or I think in Chimera's case, it's more about, like, the power level, honestly. Chimera is good at what it does. I just don't think what it does is at the same power level as, like, a lot of other stuff in the format right now, right? But, yeah, definitely still a very solid deck, of course, in its own right. Okay, here is the big one that you've probably been wondering about. Snake Eye. What do I think of Snake Eye? Where's it going to be on this tier list? I will put it in tier 1. And I'm actually going to put it above Rescue Ace. I think that Snake Eye is still the best deck in the format. I've done a little bit of post-ban list testing with actually both Snake Eye and Rescue Ace so far. We've actually been doing that on stream. So if you want to check out the VODs for that, you can check out the video description below. The VODs should currently be up on my Twitch still. And if they're not there, you'll find them on my second YouTube channel. Link also in the description below. But, yeah, after testing with Snake Eye, I really do think it is still the best deck. Now, one thing I will say, though, is that the deck's grind game is notably worse with Snake Eye Ash being at 1. However, I think when it comes to overall consistency, like, personally, in the games that we played, I had no trouble still setting up turn 1 plays. This is even playing only 1 original sin, too. 3 popular, though. But, and I added, like, a Cashier package was, like, the big thing that I added. Again, you can find more about that as we actually built the deck and then also tested it both on stream. So, you can see kind of, like, my deck building process for the newer build as well if you want to check out those VODs there. But, yeah, no, I do think that Snake Eye is still the best deck. Now, like I said, though, before, the power level, excuse me, the power level difference between these tier 1 decks and tier 2 has narrowed, especially between Snake Eye and everything else quite a bit. Like, I think overall, the meta is gonna be the same in terms of what decks are here, and also, let's be real, overall where the decks are on the tier list. But Snake Eye will not feel quite as oppressive, and to a lesser extent Rescue Ace as well. I could very easily see a world where this ends up being how the meta plays out, where Rescue Ace just ends up being a little bit better than Snake Eye, like enough so because of overall consistency that it ends up being the top deck. But my prediction is that Snake Eye will remain the best deck. Some of you might be disappointed by that, I know, but I do just think that it is still quite good. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Mathmech. I'm going to put Mathmech at the bottom of tier 2, although in my personal experience laddering with this deck, I could almost call it a tier 1 deck, if nothing else than for how often people will just surrender the instant they see a circular, which is wild. Like, that even happened when I played Snake Eye on ladder, right? Like, people conceded much more quickly to Mathmech than Snake Eye, even pre-ban list hits. I'm not even talking about my post-ban list build, I'm talking about, like, earlier this month. Which is kind of funny. I guess people were just sick of circular shit. But honestly, in terms of power level, I do think that it is going to be in tier 2, but probably a little bit lower than a lot of these other tier 2 decks. Like, it's definitely not better than Lab. I don't call it better than Vanquish Soul. I think it's... I don't even think it's better than Pearly, honestly. I might be willing to do this, but in terms of Monodium's win rate, it's just been so impressive lately that I'm going to put Monodium above Mathmech as well. I will say this, I think we're at a point, and I think I've said this before too, actually, but I think we're at a point where Circular doesn't even need to get limited anymore. Like, I think Circular could just stay at 3 and it would be fine, honestly. The power level of the format has, like, reached a point where Circular, as strong as it is, can't carry Mathmech as hard as it once did, just because all the other decks have, like, so many good tools as well, right? But... still a very respectable deck, of course. Blackwing, yeah, I know people might not like this, but I think I gotta put Blackwing below Stun still. I think it's still better than some of these other decks here on the tier list, but in terms of both popularity and win rate, I do think that Blackwing is still just a little bit lower than where Stun is at. Again, overall, a very solid deck. Another good deck for beginners, if for nothing else than for how cheap it is to build. Really, on top of staples, of course. You just get the 3 Blackwing structure decks. You craft one specific UR. No Thung, I think it is, the level 6 Synchro. Or is it 5? One of the two, anyway. And then you're just good to go. So, overall, very solid deck. I think that not only its overall popularity as an archetype, but the fact that it is a structure deck is why it still shows up as often as it does on the tier list overall. But, yeah, still, if you wanted to try to ladder with Blackwing, I would not fault you for it. I think it's a solid deck. It's one of those where, like, if you want to top a tournament or get Master 1, like, you're gonna need to be a pretty good Blackwing player, like a pretty dedicated pilot, but certainly not impossible by any means at all. Oh, Sword Soul. I think last tier list was the first one where I did put it in Rogue, no longer in tier 3, and I think I gotta say it's still there. I'll put it, like, second place, though. Like, it's still... Like, Sword Soul's game plan is still so consistent, and honestly still fairly strong, right? That I'm willing to put it above a lot of the other upper Rogue decks, but again, how the mighty have fallen, I just cannot call Sword Soul a tier to deck anymore. Again, of course, as always ever, Rogue decks are still good, but Sword Soul is a notably, I think, Rogue deck moving forward. Rikastan Avalon, I will put that probably somewhere in this neighborhood. I think I still see Kashtira a little bit more often than this deck, but I think more than some of these other long-form, like, Rogue combo decks, right, like Hero, Ignister, and Dino, Rikastan Avalon is still notable in terms of both consistency and power level, right? All you have to do is plant that seed, that normal monster Loki, and then you are still good to go. The Rikastan Avalon deck does have a lot of pretty... just Cone is such a good card, right? Such a good card that... Yeah, I think it's still very much an upper Rogue deck. For me, the line between upper and mid Rogue is probably actually here, right about between Rika and where Sky Striker is at. And I will also be putting Fluon to Reese in upper Rogue. I think it's actually better than Kashtira right now. Like, if you're going to play a shifter deck... I would rather play Flu, honestly, I think, than a pure Kashtira variant. Again, it's consistency. The Kashtira deck is still strong in terms of its power, but as far as how often you can actually find plays, again, that consistency, it's just not there still, I don't think. You know what I will say? I'm looking at tier 3. I'm willing to put Infernoble up here at the bottom of tier 3. I think it's notable enough in terms of power level. I think it's above Sword Soul for sure. Yeah, I'll keep it there. Now, I'm honestly kind of tempted to do that and put Super V Samurai at the bottom of tier 3. Yeah, I'll actually leave it like that. I think that's a good spot. But there will still end up being more tier 2 decks than tier 3 as branded. I do think alongside Lab is still a notably strong tier 2 deck in Master Duel. You still see it, I think, more often than Vanquish Soul, Pearly, Monodium, and Mathmech. Yeah, I'll leave Branded up here. It's funny, you know, I think Branded, in terms of, like, sheer strength, is, like, kind of the new Sword Soul in that regard. That sounds a little weird to phrase it that way, but, like, I guess Branded has still been getting more support than Sword Soul has, too, though, to be fair. But Branded has been, like, if not upper tier 2, tier 1 for, like, what, coming up on almost 2 years now, I think. Definitely over a year for sure. Maybe a year and a half. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, upper tier 2 as well, put it. And I think that is going to, in fact, do it for our tier list video. This looks good to me. I'm looking it over right now. And yeah, I think this is where I am comfortable leaving all of these decks. So again, let me know what you think in the comments below if you agree or disagree. And again, if you disagree, that is totally cool. I do love discourse, just not rudeness. We can leave that at the door. But yeah, that'll do it for this one. So let's just move now to our outro. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. That means a lot to me. It's also a great way to support the channel, so thank you very much in that way as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways, like the very special patrons that I am thanking here, you can do so by checking out some of the links in the description. One of those goes to the Patreon, where you can join these fine folk and support the channel that way. I do post daily content over on Patreon, so you do get something for supporting there. And if you're interested, I also have a coaching tier option as well. Details again will be on Patreon in the link below. Also in the description linked below is my Twitch page where I stream a few times a week. You can go ahead and check that out, follow or subscribe over there if you ever want to catch me live. You'll also find my second YouTube channel if you feel like subscribing over there to watch some of the Twitch VODs as well as some additional non-Yu-Gi-Oh related content that I make over there. Again, any of those links you want to check out is all a great way of supporting. But again, even if you don't do that, just watching was also a fantastic way to support. And once again, I have to thank you so very much. But in any case, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, and I'm hoping you have a fantastic day.